The rooftop lounge was all glass and candlelight and quiet money. The kind of place where waiters moved like shadows in black uniforms and handbags sitting on chairs cost more than my monthly car payment. I was mid-laugh with my friend Sloane Mercer, telling her about the disaster at work that morning, when her new circle drifted in. 6 people dressed like they'd stepped straight out of a luxury catalog. Tailored blazers, designer shoes, watches that caught the light. Sloane's face changed, subtly. Her smile shifted from genuine to performance. She glanced at me like she was suddenly remembering I was standing there. "Oh, everyone's here," she said brightly, her voice a half-octave higher than normal. They approached our table with the casual confidence of people who'd never been told they didn't belong anywhere. Sloane stood to greet them, air-kissing cheeks, laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Then she turned back to me, smiled, tight, polite, professional, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's not with us. She doesn't really belong with this group. Different background, you know?" One of the women glanced at my dress, a simple black number I'd bought on sale, and whispered to her friend, "Oh, just that." Oh, like I was a smell she'd just noticed. I swallowed hard and kept my face perfectly still, like I could hold my dignity in place with my jaw clenched tight enough. "My name is Harlow Vance. I'm 34 years old. I grew up counting dollars at the grocery store with my mom, not collecting them at rooftop bars with $7 olives. I came tonight because Sloane had begged me. I need you there. It'll be fun, just like old times." Her voice on the phone had been warm, familiar. The friend I'd known for 8 years. But standing there under the heat lamps with my ears ringing, I realized something cold and clear. She hadn't invited me as a friend. She'd invited me as a contrast, as proof of how far she'd climbed, as the before picture to her after. The circle closed around Sloane, their bodies forming a wall that shut me out with practiced ease. Someone asked about weekend plans. Someone else mentioned a restaurant I'd never heard of. Sloane laughed, bright and false, then leaned toward me. Her perfume was new, expensive, nothing like the drugstore body spray she used to wear. She whispered, her breath warm against my ear, "Please don't make this weird." I forced a smile so bright it hurt my cheeks. My face felt like plastic, like it might crack if I moved wrong. "No worries," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "I totally get it." I stepped back, giving them space, letting their bodies close into that tight circle that locked me out completely. My hands were freezing even though we were standing under the outdoor heat lamps. Someone was telling a story about a yacht. Someone else was complaining about their renovation contractor. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream, something to move past, not engage with. I picked up my drink and moved toward the railing, pretending to admire the view. The city spread below us, lights blinking like stars fallen to earth. Behind me, I heard Sloane's voice cut through the chatter. Softer now, meant for her new friends, not for me. "See, she's sweet, she'll understand." Sweet, like a child, like someone who could be patted on the head and dismissed. I gripped my glass tighter and stared at the skyline until my vision blurred. At the coat check, 20 minutes later, I heard my name again, floating across the lounge like a joke being passed around. One of the men from Sloane's group, tall, silver-haired, expensive watch, was standing near the bar. He asked Sloane, "So how do you two know each other?" Sloane answered too fast, too rehearsed. "Oh, we go way back. Harlow's always been around. Always been around. Like furniture, like a stray cat that showed up and nobody had the heart to chase away." I handed my ticket to the coat check attendant, a young woman with tired eyes. She disappeared into the back room. The man asked another question I couldn't quite hear. Sloane laughed. Said something about different worlds and you know how it is. The attendant returned with my coat and my card reader. I inserted my card, hit the buttons, waited for the familiar beep. Error, declined, my cheeks burned. I knew there was money in my account. I'd checked that morning, but the screen blinked red, insistent. Declined. "Ma'am," the attendant said quietly, "your card was declined." Behind me, conversation continued. No one noticed, no one cared. Except Sloane. I felt her eyes on me. My hands fumbled for my wallet, fingers clumsy with embarrassment. I pulled out my debit card. The backup, the one I tried not to use because the account was smaller. "Sorry," I muttered. "Let me try this one." The attendant's face was kind, professional. She'd seen this before. Probably saw it every night in a place like this. I tapped the card again, slower this time, steady, willing it to work, approved. Relief flooded through me so sharp it almost hurt. I thanked her, overtipped to compensate for the awkwardness, and shrugged into my coat. When I turned, Sloane was watching me from across the room. Not concerned, not sympathetic, just watching. Studying. Her expression was calculating. She smiled. Small, satisfied, like she'd just learned something useful about me. Something she could use later. I walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. In the rideshare home, the city lights smeared across the window like wet paint. Buildings blurred into streams of gold and white. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and tried not to cry. My phone buzzed in my lap. Sloane. I stared at her name on the screen and didn't answer. Another buzz. A notification from the group chat I was still in. The one Sloane had added me to months ago, when we were still real friends. Someone had posted a photo from the rooftop. The whole group gathered around the railing, champagne glasses raised. Golden light. Perfect smiles. My face wasn't in it. My name wasn't in the caption. I scrolled through the comments. Heart emojis. Best night. Love you guys. This crew. Then Sloane's message landed, direct and pointed. You left without saying goodbye. Kinda dramatic. I turned my phone face down and watched the city disappear behind me. She called the next morning at 9. Her voice was gentle, concerned. Doing damage control. Hey, about last night, she began. I hope you weren't upset. You know how those people are. I was honestly trying to protect you. Protect me. From what? From being seen standing next to her? They can be a little intense, she continued. Judgmental. I didn't want them sizing you up. I thought if I kept some distance, it would be easier for you. Easier for me, not easier for her. I appreciate that, I said, my voice flat. Good, because honestly, you'd have hated it anyway. All they talk about is money and status. So shallow. You're better than that. Better than that, but not good enough to stand with. I gripped the phone tighter. Sloane, did you plan that? What you said when they arrived? There was a pause. Too long. Silence that stretched and filled with meaning. Then she laughed. Light, airy, dismissive. Don't be insecure, Harlow. It's not my fault you take everything so personally. My throat tightened. I'm just trying to build something here, she continued. Network. Make connections. You understand, right? You know how important this is for my career. I do understand, I said quietly. Good, because I've worked too hard to be taken seriously. I can't afford to. She stopped, caught herself. But the sentence hung in the air, unfinished but clear. She couldn't afford to be associated with someone like me, someone who grew up poor, someone who didn't have the right clothes or the right connections, someone who made her look less serious by proximity. My throat tightened as I realized what she'd just admitted. I wasn't her friend anymore. I was a liability, a reminder of who she used to be before she reinvented herself. I have to go, I said. I hung up before she could respond. Over the next weeks, the exclusion turned into a routine. Plans were made without me. Invitations got lost in the digital void. Group chats went quiet when I posted. I learned about dinners after they happened. Someone would mention the dessert they'd shared, the wine they'd tried. Oh, you weren't there? I thought Sloane invited you. Sloane always had an excuse. I texted you. Must not have gone through. It was super last minute. I thought you'd be busy. She told everyone I was busy. Like my absence was my choice, like I was the one pulling away. Then I heard my name in a stranger's mouth at a coffee shop. A woman I vaguely recognized from Sloane's Instagram was talking to her friend in line behind me. Sloane said her old friend is a bit rough. Sweet girl, but you know, different background, hard to relate to. Rough. Like I had jagged edges that might cut. I left without ordering. I opened my closet that evening looking for something specific. A dress. Designer. Borrowed. Sloane had begged to borrow it 6 months ago for a work event. Please, Harlow, I have nothing appropriate, and this would be perfect on me. I'll take such good care of it. It had been my one splurge. Bought on sale, but still expensive. I'd worn it twice before lending it to her. It wasn't there. I texted her. Hey, do you still have my navy dress? The one you borrowed? Her reply came instantly. Oh my God, are you really doing this? Keeping score like that? I thought we were friends. Like I was the one who'd changed. Like I was being petty. That night, scrolling Instagram mindlessly, I saw it. The dress. On Sloan, at some gallery opening. The caption read, "Finally found my style. My style. My dress." Her lie. A mutual friend, Kendra, met me for coffee the following week. She stirred her latte for a long time without drinking it. Wouldn't meet my eyes. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "Sloan's been saying things." My stomach dropped. "What things?" "That you can't keep up. That you're clingy. That you try too hard to fit in with people above your... You know?" "Above my what? My class? My income bracket?" Kendra finally looked at me. She's been strategic about it. Not mean exactly. Just concerned sounding, like she's worried about you. My hands went cold around my coffee cup. She told someone at a networking event that you embarrassed her at the rooftop thing, that she had to distance herself for professional reasons. The cruelty wasn't just casual. It was calculated. Sloan was rewriting our history, making herself the victim and me the problem, building a narrative that justified pushing me out. Kendra reached across the table. "I'm sorry, I thought you should know." "She said she had to cut me off?" I asked quietly. Kendra nodded. Those were her exact words. I didn't rage, didn't send long messages she could screenshot and twist, didn't demand explanations or apologies. I just stopped reaching. I removed myself from the group chat. Quietly, no announcement, just tapped leave group and let myself disappear from that digital space. I unfollowed her on social media, not blocked. That would give her ammunition. Just unfollowed. Let the algorithm decide we weren't connected anymore. I stopped texting first, stopped liking posts, stopped showing up to things I wasn't explicitly invited to. I let the silence be my boundary. 2 days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. Sloan. Standing in my hallway, smiling like nothing had happened. She held up a bottle of wine when I opened the door. Expensive, the kind with a fancy label I couldn't pronounce. "I miss you," she said, her eyes shiny, her voice soft and vulnerable. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Old habits. She settled onto my couch like she'd done 100 times before, kicked off her shoes, looked around my small apartment with the expression of someone visiting a museum exhibit labeled "How I Used to Live." "I've been so busy," she said. "Work is insane. But I realized I haven't seen you in forever and I felt terrible." She didn't feel terrible, she felt something. But not that. We made small talk, surface level, safe. Then she shifted, the real reason for her visit approaching like a storm cloud. "So there's this charity auction next month," she said. "Really exclusive, important people, and I could use someone." She paused, recalibrated her phrasing. "You're so good at handling details, organizing things. I thought maybe you'd want to come with me, help me navigate it." Help her, not attend with her as an equal. Help, like hired staff. She named the event like it was a gift she was offering me. I stared at her. Really stared. Saw her clearly for maybe the first time. She'd humiliated me publicly, erased me from her life. Told people I was clingy and rough and didn't belong. Rewrote our entire friendship into a story where she was generous for tolerating me, and she still thought I'd help her. Still thought I was her backstage crew, her detail handler, her convenient charity case who'd be grateful for crumbs. "No," I said. Just that. One word. Simple. Final. Her smile froze. For half a second, her mask slipped. I saw confusion, then irritation, then the smile reformed. Brighter. Harder. "No?" She laughed. "Come on, it'll be fun. You'd be doing me a huge favor." I said no, Sloan. We sat in silence, the wine bottle between us unopened. She stood slowly, picked up her purse. Her movements were careful, controlled. She leaned close as she passed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't make me regret being nice to you." The threat hung in the air after she left, but I felt lighter than I had in months. Life got quieter without Sloan. At first it felt like grief, like I'd lost something important. Then it felt like breathing. I started saving money seriously, not out of fear of being poor again. Out of pride, out of wanting to build something that was mine. I joined a volunteer committee that funded scholarships for first-generation college students, people who'd grown up like I did, who understood what it meant to count dollars and dream carefully. I met people who didn't treat my story like a stain to be hidden, who saw growing up working class as strength, not shame. I dated, worked, built a life that felt solid instead of performative. Years passed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I stopped thinking about Sloan except occasionally. a flash of memory, a lesson learned. Then an envelope arrived, heavy, cream-colored, gold script that caught the light, a wedding invitation. The bride's name made me smile, Tamsin Hale, a woman from my scholarship committee who'd become a real friend over the years. I opened the invitation, already planning my response. Then I saw it. At the bottom. Maid of Honor. Sloan Mercer. I stood in my kitchen holding the invitation, my pulse jumping in my throat. Tamsin and I had become close over the past 3 years, real friends, the kind who showed up for each other, who knew each other's stories without judgment. I'd never mentioned Sloan to her. Never said we had history. It hadn't seemed relevant. But now I'd be walking into a wedding where Sloan would be front and center, where she'd have position and authority and the bride's ear. A second card slipped out of the envelope, smaller. Cream cardstock with elegant printing. Please join us for a private family and wedding party brunch the morning after the ceremony. Breakfast, mimosas, and gratitude. The venue was a private estate outside the city, the kind with iron gates and a fountain in the circular driveway. I texted Tamsin, wouldn't miss it for anything, congratulations. Then I opened my laptop and started looking for a dress. Not the borrowed designer dress Sloan had stolen, not something trying too hard, something perfect, something me. The day of the wedding, I stood in a boutique fitting room, staring at myself in the mirror. The dress was simple, elegant, a deep emerald that made my skin glow. Not flashy, not trying to prove anything, just beautiful. My hands shook slightly as I smoothed the fabric, not from fear of seeing Sloan, from fear of becoming the old version of myself. The one who shrank, who apologized for existing, who let other people define her worth. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham Sutter, my fiancé of 6 months, a man I'd met through the scholarship committee. A man who knew my whole story and loved me for it, not despite it. Proud of you. I'll be right beside you the whole time. I looked at myself one more time. Shoulders back, head high. I could do this. We arrived at the estate as the sun was starting its descent toward evening. Golden light everywhere. The valet took our car, and as we stepped out, he smiled. Welcome back, Miss Vance. I'd been here before, for committee meetings, for planning sessions. This place knew me. That realization steadied me. I stepped onto the gravel path, sunlight flashing off champagne glasses on the lawn. Laughter floated over the perfectly manicured grass like music. White chairs set up in rows facing an arbor covered in roses. Graham's hand found mine, squeezed gently. Then I saw her, Sloan, standing near the entrance to the main tent, perfect hair in an elaborate updo. Perfect dress in the designated maid of honor color, scanning the arriving guests like she was the one getting married. Her eyes moved across the crowd, cataloging, judging, making mental notes. Then they landed on me. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't do the polite wave of recognition. She froze, completely, like her body forgot how to pretend. I watched emotions flash across her face, surprise, confusion, then something else, something harder to name. Calculation maybe, or fear. She recovered, took a breath, smoothed her dress, put on her smile like armor, and walked straight toward me. Sloan stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Different from 5 years ago, but still expensive. Harlow, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Wow. I didn't expect you here. I'm here for Tamsin, I said simply. We're friends. Her eyes flicked to Graham, taking inventory. Nice suit, confident stance, wedding ring on his left hand catching the light. I could see her recalibrating, adjusting her mental image of who I was, what I'd become. How lovely, she said, her smile pinned in place. Tamsin has so many wonderful friends. She extended her hand to Graham, introduced herself as the maid of honor, made small talk about the weather and the venue and how beautiful everything looked. Then she leaned slightly closer to me. Her voice dropped just low enough that Graham couldn't quite hear. Just don't drift into the wrong spaces. Okay? Some areas are for family and wedding party only. I'd hate for there to be any confusion. The same move, 5 years later. Dressed up in lace and politeness, telling me where I didn't belong. Inside the reception tent, Sloan intercepted us before we could find our assigned seats. She appeared out of nowhere, smile bright, voice cheerful. Oh, there's been a mix-up with the seating, she said, waving us toward the back of the tent. They accidentally put you at the wrong table. You're actually back here. She gestured to a table near the service entrance. half hidden behind a massive floral arrangement, the table where vendors ate, where people who weren't quite guests but weren't quite staff got placed. It was the same thing she'd done at the rooftop bar. The same exclusion, just packaged differently. Graham looked at me, confused. I opened my mouth to respond. Then a voice cut through behind us. "Sloan, what are you doing?" The wedding coordinator, clipboard in hand, headset on, expression professionally confused. Sloan turned, her smile never faltering. "Just helping guests find their seats." There was some confusion. "Harlow Vance is seated at table 6, the coordinator said, checking her clipboard. "Front section, near the bride's table." Sloan's smile flickered, just for a second. "Oh, my mistake," I thought. The coordinator, tactful but firm, guided us forward. "Right this way, Miss that Vance." As we passed Sloan, I heard her hiss to someone nearby. "She's not who she's pretending to be." Table 6 was beautiful. Crystal. Candles. A perfect view of where the bride and groom would sit. A woman I didn't know approached me before I could sit. 40s. Elegant. Cautious eyes. "So how do you know Tamsin?" she asked. The question sounded innocent, but felt like an investigation. "Through volunteer work," I answered simply. "We serve on a scholarship committee together." Her face softened, genuine interest replacing suspicion. "That's wonderful." Tamsin mentioned how important that work is to her. "It's important to me too," I said. She hesitated, glanced toward where Sloan stood near the bar. "That's not what I heard." I waited. Didn't defend. Didn't explain. "Someone told me you used to beg to be included in social circles, that you were difficult about boundaries." I met her eyes steadily. "That's not true, but I understand why you'd ask." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I thought it didn't sound right. I'm glad I asked you directly." She walked away and I realized something important. Sloan's whisper campaign only worked on people who didn't bother to look past the gossip. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. The bride and groom thanked everyone for coming, for celebrating, for being part of their story. Then the host stepped up to the microphone. Tamsin's father. Warm smile. Genuine gratitude in his voice. "Before we open the dance floor," he said, "Tamsin and Camden asked me to acknowledge someone whose generosity helped make this weekend possible." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. Tamsin had asked permission months ago. I'd said yes, but asked her to keep it quiet. Apparently she'd decided otherwise. "Many of you don't know this," her father continued. "But years ago, Tamsin received a scholarship that changed her life. That opportunity came through a committee led by someone here tonight." He looked directly at me. "Harlow Vance? Would you stand?" I stood slowly. Every eye in the tent turned toward me. The tent was silent, except for the soft clink of silverware being set down. 200 people turning in their seats to look at me. Tamsin's father continued, his voice warm and clear. "This scholarship committee didn't just provide Tamsin with tuition money. They provided mentorship, guidance, support when she needed it most." He paused, smiled. "And this weekend, Harlow made a private gift to ensure that Tamsin's grandmother and elderly aunts could travel here from across the country. Because she knows how much family means." The tent erupted in applause, not polite golf claps, real, genuine appreciation. People started approaching our table, thanking me, asking about the scholarship program, sharing their own stories of mentors who'd made a difference. A woman told me about her first-generation daughter. A man mentioned his nephew who'd need support in 2 years. Business cards were exchanged. Connections made. This wasn't a room Sloan could control with status games and whispered gossip. These were people who valued substance over surface. Who cared about what you did, not just who you knew. I glanced toward where Sloan stood near the bar. Her face was tight. Smile frozen. She'd spent 5 years telling people I didn't belong. And now I was at the center of the room's attention for reasons she couldn't diminish. Then I saw Tamsin walking toward her. Tamsin's voice was calm when she reached Sloan, but it carried. People nearby could hear. "Sloan, why did you try to move Harlow to a different table?" Sloan's eyes went wide, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "I thought there was a mix-up. I was just trying to help." The coordinator said you specifically told her Harlow was seated wrong. "It was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" Tamsin's voice remained gentle, but there was steel underneath. "Because I also heard you've been telling people Harlow doesn't really fit in here." Sloane stammered, her carefully constructed poise crumbling. I never said, I was just... We don't treat our guests that way, Tamsin said simply. Not angry, just final. Harlow is my friend. She's earned her place here. Please remember that. Then she turned and walked away. Conversation over, door closed. Sloane stood frozen, her face pale. People nearby had heard the exchange. Word would spread. The narrative she tried to build about me being the one who didn't belong had just shattered publicly. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. And ready to leave this chapter behind completely. Later, as Graham and I were leaving, I saw Sloane standing alone near the edge of the dance floor. People moved around her, past her, not choosing to stand near her. She'd spent the whole evening trying to control the room, to manage perceptions, to keep me small and herself elevated. But the room had made its own choices, and they hadn't chosen her version of the story. I didn't gloat, didn't approach, didn't try to have some final confrontation. I just walked out with my head high, Graham's hand in mine, finally certain of what I deserved all along. In the car, Graham asked if I was okay. I'm better than okay, I said, and I meant it. The girl who'd stood on that rooftop 5 years ago, absorbing Sloane's cruelty and forcing smiles, she'd be proud of who I'd become. Not because I'd gotten revenge, not because I'd made Sloane look bad, because I'd refused to stay small. I'd built a life based on substance instead of status, on genuine connections instead of strategic networking, on knowing my worth instead of letting others define it. Sloane had frozen when she saw me, not because I'd changed on the outside, though I had. She'd frozen because I was no longer the person she could diminish with a whisper and a smile. I didn't win by getting even. I won by refusing to stay small.